Welcome to Africo Tales. In the bustling heart of Lagos, where ambition pulsed through the veins of every skyscraper and the aroma of enterprise mingled with the scent of street food, lived a woman whose spirit was about to be forged in the fires of betrayal and rise like a phoenix. She had given her all, emptied her heart and her coffers for a man who saw her as a mere stepping stone, only to be cast aside for another. But destiny, a mischievous storyteller itself, had penned a twist far grander than any human could conceive. For the woman they called barren, the woman they deemed worthless, would return not in rags, but robed in triumph, carrying 3 miracles on her hip, ready to reclaim her narrative and shatter the illusions of her tormentors. Prepare yourself, for this is the saga of Rosalind, a tale of vindication, destiny, and the unyielding strength of an African queen. Rosalind was just 23 when she married Jerome, a man whose charm was as potent and intoxicating as the finest palm wine. He was the epitome of Lagosian allure. Tall, with skin like polished obsidian, a smile that could disarm a hostile market crowd, and a way with words that made you believe the stars had aligned just for your love story. Their wedding, a grand affair in an upscale Lagos hall, was the talk of their social circle. Rosalind, radiant in her elaborate lace and geal, believed in the fairy tale, in the sacred bond of matrimony, convinced that her boundless love could transform any man into his best self. She radiated hope, a shimmering aura that drew envy from her friends, and a quiet, almost nervous pride from her astute mother, Mama Nkechi. Yet, even in the heady days of newfound marital bliss, the first, discordant note played softly, almost imperceptibly. It was the specter of Jerome's son, Fred, and Fred's mother, Veronica. Jerome dismissed Veronica as a mistake, a fleeting error in his past, insisting Rosalind was his future. "You are my wife now, baby. You are my destiny," he would croon, stroking her hair. And Rosalind, desperate to believe, swallowed his words like potent, bitter herbs, convinced they were necessary for their future. She told herself that a good wife accepted all of her husband, past and present. In the vibrant, demanding city of Lagos, where appearances often dictated reality, Rosalind strived to embody the perfect wife, to present a facade of unwavering support even as a gnawing unease began to settle in her heart. This initial compromise, a small fracture in the foundation of her happiness, would eventually widen into a chasm. But in her youthful exuberance, Rosalind merely painted over it, hoping love would truly conquer all. The whispers began subtly, then grew into a roaring cacophony in Rosalind's mind, mirroring the incessant Lagos traffic. Months turned into years, each cycle bringing the familiar sting of disappointment, as pregnancy tests remained stubbornly negative. In a society that celebrated lineage and the blessing of children, the absence of a swelling belly felt like a personal failing, a gaping void that Jerome was quick to exploit. His initial affection curdled into icy contempt, his words becoming sharper, laced with a cruel accusation. "My boy is strong," he'd declare, gesturing to Fred's beaming picture on their exquisitely carved mantelpiece. "I have proof I can make babies, so what's wrong with you?" Those 4 words, "what's wrong with you," became the haunting refrain of her marriage, a relentless drumbeat of blame that chipped away at her soul. He hurled them at her when dinner wasn't exactly to his taste, when she timidly questioned his increasingly frequent calls with Veronica, or, most painfully, when she suggested they both visit a doctor to uncover the reason for their infertility. "I am not going to any doctor," he'd snap, his voice like cracking thunder. "I have a healthy son. That is all the proof I need that everything works down there." So, Rosalind endured the pilgrimage alone. Month after month, she navigated the labyrinthine corridors of private clinics in Ikoyi, subjected herself to invasive tests, drank foul-tasting contrast solutions, and lay on cold tables under the hum of diagnostic machines. She faced procedures that left her cramping and bleeding, tears streaming down her face in the anonymous quiet of hospital parking lots. The irony, a bitter draft, was that every single test confirmed what she instinctively knew. She was perfectly, gloriously, 100% fertile and healthy. Her eggs were vibrant, her tubes clear, her hormone levels textbook perfect. There was absolutely nothing wrong with her. But Jerome, shrouded in his self-righteous delusion, refused to hear a truth that contradicted his fabricated narrative. When Rosalind returned home with the definitive medical reports, practically quivering with relief and a renewed glimmer of hope, Jerome barely spared her a glance from his expensive smartphone. "That's good, baby," he mumbled, his fingers flying across the screen, likely weaving another web of conversation with Veronica. "Jerome," she pressed, her voice trembling, "this means the issue might be—" Before she could finish, he cut her off with a chilling finality. "There is no issue with me," he declared, finally lifting eyes that were now entirely devoid of warmth. "I have proof walking around calling me daddy. Do not start with that nonsense." The words were a physical blow, worse than any he had inflicted with his hands. Jerome, ever conscious of his image in Lagos's elite circles, never resorted to outright physical violence, but his cruelty manifested in other, more insidious ways. His hands, quick to grab, would squeeze her wrist a fraction too hard, leave lingering marks on her shoulders, or grip her jaw with a pressure that mimicked affection, but conveyed a chilling warning. These touches, outwardly tender, were inwardly a constant torment, a subtle assertion of dominance that left her bruised soul aching. The emotional pain, however, was a relentless, festering wound. Jerome was a master architect of degradation, each word a precisely aimed projectile. He knew exactly which phrases would cut deepest, how to make her feel infinitesimally small, utterly worthless, and absurdly grateful for the meager scraps of attention he deigned to throw her way. "You are lucky I married you," he'd sneer. During their escalating arguments, most men would not want a woman who cannot give them children. "Maybe if you spent less time running your mouth and more time figuring out what is wrong with you, we might actually have a family by now. Veronica never had any problems getting pregnant, you know. Maybe the problem isn't men. Maybe, Rosalind, the problem is you." For 6 agonizing years, Rosalind endured this torment, absorbing his anger, his blame, and his calculated cruelty, stubbornly convincing herself that this desolate landscape was the true face of marriage. She watched him text his former lover, pretended not to notice his inexplicable hours-long absences, and lay awake at night, desperately searching for her own perceived flaws, wondering what grievous sin she had committed to deserve such a hollow existence. In her pursuit of an illusion, she had surrendered everything: her love, her loyalty, her dignity, and soon, tragically, even her hard-earned money. The subtle erosion of Rosalind's financial independence began when Jerome's luxury auto shop, a beacon of his supposed success, hit a patch of turbulence. "Business is bad, baby," he'd lament, his brow furrowed with performative worry. "They are cutting hours. We are behind on rent, on the Range Rover payment, on everything." Rosalind watched his frustration morph into a raw, biting anger, an anger that, like a homing pigeon, always found its way back to her. She, meanwhile, diligently toiled at a high-end department store in Victoria Island, her meager earnings carefully hoarded. She was a woman of foresight, a modern Lagosian woman who understood the wisdom in saving for a rainy day. She clipped coupons, opted for generic brands over designer labels, and often skipped her own lunch to squirrel away every kobo. Over the years, she had amassed a tidy sum of $12,000. Her nest egg, a dream fund for a future home, or perhaps, she had once foolishly hoped, for fertility treatments. Then came that Tuesday, the day Jerome discovered her secret stash. The exact moment was a blur, overshadowed by the sudden predatory glint in his eyes, not anger, but a chilling hunger. 12,000, he repeated, his voice low, incredulous. "You have been sititiing on 12,000 while I am over here stressing about bills?" "I was saving it for us," Rosalind quickly interjected, a tremor in her voice, recognizing the shark-like danger in his tone. "For our future. For when we... Our future is now," he cut her off, his words a sudden sharp command. "I have an opportunity, Rosalind. A real opportunity. My boy, Demola, he is opening a second location for his dry cleaning business in Abuja. He needs a partner, someone to run the new spot. This could be it, baby. This could be our way out." Every fiber of Rosalind's being screamed a silent, desperate warning. No. But Jerome, a master manipulator, was looking at her with something that almost resembled the love she craved, speaking to her like a partner, not a problem. Desperate for that fleeting connection, she ignored the blaring red flags, her own voice betraying her. "How much does he need?" she heard herself ask, sealing her fate with those few hopeful words. "All of it," Jerome declared, his words quick, decisive, and chillingly devoid of hesitation. "The whole 12,000. I know IT is a lot, baby, but think about IT. This is our chance. Once the business takes off, we will make that money back. In no time." He moved closer, his hands, for once, gently cupping her face, a tender gesture designed to disarm. "And maybe, once I am not so stressed about money, we can truly focus on starting our family." The promise, shimmering and seductive, was a potent drug. Rosalind, starved for affection and a genuine future, desperately wanted to believe that their problems were merely financial, that once their coffers were full, their emotional well-being would magically mend. She craved to believe that Jerome could love her with the same selfless devotion she poured into him. That night, she emptied her savings, every last kobo she had painstakingly saved over years of denial and sacrifice, and placed it into his outstretched, avaricious hands. He held her close, whispering saccharine promises into her ear, weaving a tapestry of a transformed future, a new beginning where their lives would truly intertwine. Unbeknownst to him, a flicker of self-preservation, a whisper of intuition, compelled Rosalind to discreetly record his promises on her phone, a digital testament that would later echo through the halls of justice. The dry cleaning business in Abuja, fueled by Rosalind's sacrifice, indeed soared. Within 6 months, Jerome was swimming in money, his chest puffed out like a peacock displaying its elaborate plumage. He strode through Lagos, a caricature of newfound success, believing he had single-handedly built an empire. But success, that fickle mistress, did not soften Jerome. It merely amplified his cruelty. Now flush with cash and brimming with arrogance, he began to treat Rosalind not as his wife, but as a forgotten employee. He stayed out later, his tailored designer clothes reeking of expensive cologne she hadn't bought, his conversations with her reduced to curt commands. Veronica's text messages morphed into lengthy phone calls, then morphed again into frequent visits to check on his son, which quickly escalated into overnight stays, each excuse thinner than the last. Rosalind, meanwhile, still worked her modest department store job, struggling to afford groceries while Jerome squandered thousands on lavish dinners she wasn't invited to and bespoke suits she would never touch. She slept alone in their expansive, empty bed, the silence amplifying the echo of his escalating betrayals. The bitter end arrived on a Thursday, a day Rosalind had planned to surprise him with his favorite meal, spicy fried chicken and jollof, rice, and the news of a weekend getaway she'd saved for, a small escape to the beaches of Calabar, hoping it might rekindle the embers of their dying marriage. Instead, she walked into a betrayal that would ignite a firestorm. Rosalind arrived home early, her arms laden with the fragrant groceries for Jerome's favorite meal, her keys jingling a hopeful tune as she approached her front door. The sound of voices, Jerome's distinct baritone intertwined with Veronica's, Unmistakable lilt sliced through the evening air, halting her mid-step. Frozen on her own elegant porch, Rosalind listened, a silent witness to the demolition of her world. Inside, her husband laughed with his ex-girlfriend, their casual conversation painting a picture of a shared future that cruelly excluded her. "She's so pathetic," Veronica's voice oozed, laced with the venomous cruelty reserved for perceived vanquished rivals. "Still playing house like you two actually have a real marriage." Jerome's reply, devoid of remorse, struck Rosalind with the force of a physical blow. "Man, I can't keep doing this much longer. I am making good money now. I do not need her anymore." Her heart seized. Veronica's follow-up was a chillingly pragmatic question. "So what are you waiting for? Just divorce her." Jerome's hesitation was not born of guilt, but calculation. "It is not that simple. She might try to come for the business, and technically, she did help me get started." Then the laughter, a sound that cleaved through Rosalind's soul like a sharpened blade. "How much could she have possibly helped?" He chuckled. "She gave me 12,000 to get the business started, cleaned out her whole savings account." Veronica's impressed gasp was audible. "And you just took it?" Jerome's response, dripping with contempt, sealed Rosalind's brokenness. "Took it and ran with it. That woman is so desperate for me to love her, she would probably give me her kidneys if I asked nice enough." Their shared laughter, mocking her desperation, her love, her monumental sacrifice, echoed in the silent hall. Rosalind retreated, her entire body trembling, and sought refuge in her car, parked discreetly down the street. For 2 long hours, she wept until her well of tears ran dry, the chilling revelations replaying endlessly in her mind. When she finally re-entered her home, Jerome sat on the couch, oblivious, or perhaps merely indifferent, to the earthquake that had just ravaged on the couch. Oblivious, or perhaps merely indifferent, to the earthquake that had just ravaged her soul. "Hey, baby," he called out casually, not even bothering to look up from the blaring television. "What is for dinner?" She longed to unleash a torrent of fury, to scream and shatter every illusion he held. But Rosalind was a broken shell, utterly exhausted, her spirit hollowed out. She walked into the kitchen, the groceries still cold in her hands, and began to cook. She made his spicy fried chicken and jollof rice, watching him devour it, each bite a shard of glass in her own throat, her heart fragmenting into smaller, irreparable pieces. 3 days later, he threw divorce papers onto the kitchen table as she washed dishes. "Sign these," he commanded, his voice as flat as the papers themselves. "What are they?" she asked, her voice a hollow whisper, though she already knew. "Divorce papers. I want out, Rosalind. This is not working." She turned slowly, the dish towel still clutched in her hand. "What isn't working, Jerome?" He shrugged, as though discussing the indifferent Lagos weather. "All of it. We don't have kids. We barely talk anymore. And honestly, I just don't love you like that anymore." The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. 6 years of marriage, summarily dismissed with a shrug and a stack of papers. "Jerome, we can work on this," she pleaded desperately. "We can go for counseling. We can—" "No," he interrupted, already turning towards the door. "I am done working on it. Just sign the papers, Rosalind. Make this easy for both of us." Her last desperate plea hung in the air. "What about the business? The money I gave you?" He paused, at the door, and for a fleeting second, a flicker of something akin to guilt crossed his face, gone before she could truly grasp it. "That was a gift," he said, his voice flat, final. "You cannot take back a gift." There had been no prenup. Jerome had been too confident in their eternal love to consider such a mundane formality. "We are going to be together forever, baby," he had once promised. But forever, it seemed, had an expiration date. Within a month, Veronica and Fred moved into their marital home. Within 2 months, the divorce was finalized, brutally swift. Within 3 months, Rosalind loaded everything she owned into the back of her modest Honda Civic, leaving the life she had painstakingly built with a man who never deserved it. At 29, she was starting over from absolute zero. Her only refuge was her childhood home in Ibadan, a city of ancient wisdom and vibrant markets where her mother, Mama Nkechi, waited. Rosalind's return to Ibadan was not the triumphant homecoming she had once envisioned, but a retreat, a surrender to the familiar comfort of her mother's embrace. Mama Nkechi, her own health failing, greeted her daughter with eyes that held both deep sadness and boundless love. Diabetes and high blood pressure had taken their toll, her doctor urging a change in diet and a reduction in stress. Luxuries Mama could ill afford while working 2 jobs to pay for her medications. Years ago, Mama had owned a small, beloved restaurant, a bustling hub in the heart of the city that served nourishing, home-cooked meals to working folks and families. But illness had forced its closure 2 years prior, and the building now stood silent, a poignant monument to forgotten dreams. "I am sorry you have to see me like this, baby," Mama Nkechi whispered on Rosalind's first night back, her voice thick with regret. "I wanted to have more to offer you when you came home." Rosalind clutched her mother's hands, her voice a raw whisper. "Mama, you have nothing to apologize for. I am the one who should be sorry. I should have been here helping you instead of chasing after a man who did not want me." Mama Nkechi's gaze sharpened, her strength still formidable. "Do not you dare blame yourself for loving someone, Rosalind. That is not a weakness. That is a strength. The fact that you can love so fully, so completely, even when it hurts, that is a gift. Do not let him take that away from you." But it felt as though Jerome had taken everything. Rosalind was a hollowed-out shell, unable to sleep, barely eating, spending her days staring at the ceiling of her childhood room, wondering how she had so catastrophically miscalculated her life. It was during these dark days that a new presence entered their quiet world. Olaniyi, known simply as Ola, a tall, lean photographer with kind eyes and a camera perpetually slung around his neck. He had been commissioned to document Ibadan's urban revitalization efforts and was drawn to the nostalgic charm of Mama Nkechi's old restaurant. "I know it is closed," he'd say, his voice gentle. "But there is something beautiful about the bones of this place. I can see the love that went into it." Mama Nkechi, sensing a kindred spirit, immediately warmed to him. She invited him in, for coffee, spending hours recounting tales of the restaurant's heyday, the joyous gatherings, the communal spirit that had thrived within its walls. Rosalind, wary and wounded, mostly hid in her room during Ola's initial visits, too raw to face the world, too broken to pretend. But Ola was persistent in the most unassuming way. "You do not have to talk to me," he said one afternoon, finding her on the back porch where she thought she was safe from intrusion. "But can I sit here with you? Sometimes it is nice just to have company." And so he sat, not pushing, not probing, simply being. In that quiet shared space, for the first time in months, Rosalind felt like she could breathe again. It took 3 months for Rosalind to finally unburden her soul to Ola. 3 months of him showing up consistently, bringing Mama Nkechi traditional remedies and fresh groceries from the market, mending small household repairs, treating them both with a quiet kindness that had become a distant memory. When she finally recounted the sordid tale of Jerome, the stolen money, the barren accusations, and the brutal divorce, she braced herself for pity, for the familiar judgment that usually accompanied such narratives. Instead, Ola's kind eyes hardened with a quiet fury. "That man is a fool," he said, his voice firm, "and someday he will realize what he gave up." "I gave him everything," Rosalind whispered, the words tearing at her throat. "My money, my love, my life, everything. And it was not enough. It was not about you not being enough, Ola countered gently, his gaze unwavering. It was about him not being man enough to recognize what he had. Slowly, tentatively, Rosalind began the arduous process of rebuilding, not just her shattered life, but her very self. She sought out a wise elder, a renowned counselor in the city, who helped her navigate the labyrinthine trauma of her marriage and the suffocating depression that had settled over her. She became Mama Nkechi's steadfast advocate, meticulously, managing her medical appointments, ensuring her adherence to a healthy diet and medication regimen. Then, one day, she looked at Mama's old restaurant with fresh, discerning eyes. The building, though tired, was structurally sound. The kitchen equipment, antiquated, was still functional. The dining room, dusty and forlorn, possessed good bones, just as Ola had observed. An idea, fragile yet persistent, began to take root. What if they reimagined it? Not as a traditional restaurant, but something new. Something that answered the changing needs of their bustling city neighborhood. Rosalind immersed herself in research, spending hours at the Ibadan library, devouring information on food trucks, grab-and-go concepts, healthy eating and meal prep services. She studied successful local businesses, poring over texts on entrepreneurship and marketing, absorbing every nugget of wisdom. The vision that emerged was elegantly simple. Wholesome, affordable meals for busy urbanites, fresh salads and grain, bowls, vibrant smoothies and cold-pressed juices, convenient meal prep containers for working families. Food that nourished the body and soul, not just filled the stomach. But visions, however compelling, did not pay bills. Rosalind, devoid of funds, started small. She secured a job at a nearby grocery store, working dawn shifts, stocking shelves, and manning registers. It was grueling, unglamorous work, but each paycheck was a lifeline, bringing her closer to her burgeoning dream. In the evenings, Mama Nkechi's kitchen became her culinary laboratory, a whirlwind of experimentation. She tested recipes, explored nutrition, honed flavor profiles, and mastered food safety. Mama Nkechi, her unwavering supporter, became her most discerning taste tester. "This is it, baby," Mama declared one night, after sampling a vibrant quinoa bowl. "This is going to change everything." Rosalind longed to believe her, but fear was a formidable adversary. Fear of failure, fear of losing the little she had painstakingly saved, fear of opening herself up only to be knocked down again. It was then that Ola, ever the gentle, steadfast presence, made his offer. "Let me help you," he said, catching her as she cleaned up after a late night of recipe testing. "I have been documenting the neighborhood's changes anyway. Let me document your journey too." Rosalind began to protest. "Ola, I do not have money to pay you." He interrupted, his gaze earnest. "I am not asking for money. I am asking to be part of something meaningful. I believe in what you are doing, Rosalind. I believe in you." Looking back, that quiet declaration, that unwavering faith, was perhaps the moment she began to fall in love, though her fractured heart was then too scarred to recognize it. Ola filmed everything. Her pre-dawn trips to the bustling local market, her late-night prep sessions, her culinary triumphs, and her disheartening failures. He captured the raw truth of her rebuilding, one small, courageous step at a time. 2 arduous years melted into the fabric of time, each day a testament to Rosalind's unyielding resolve. 2 years of grueling double shifts, of frugal ramen noodle dinners, of foregoing every non-essential expense to painstakingly rebuild her savings. 2 years of Ola's patient, persistent invitations to dinner, each met with Rosalind's consistent, gentle refusal. "I am not ready," she would explain, her voice tinged with the lingering echoes of past pain. "I am still healing. I need to focus on building something for myself before I can build anything with someone else." And each time, Ola's reply was a balm to her weary soul. I am not going anywhere. I will be here when you are ready. He was her unwavering constant, a silent pillar of strength through every setback, every small victory, every doubt, and every flash of inspiration. His camera, ever present, captured the slow, careful metamorphosis of the tired old restaurant. Rosalind, unable to afford contractors, became her own architect and builder, learning to tile, paint, and install fixtures from online tutorials. Ola, when he wasn't filming, was her devoted apprentice, and together they transformed the forgotten space into something bright, welcoming, and entirely new. She christened it Nourish, a tribute to Mama and Nkechi's unwavering belief that food should do more than fill the stomach. It should nourish the very soul. The logo, a heart crafted from intertwining leaves, symbolized the love infused into every meal. The grand opening, on a bustling Tuesday in March, 2.5 years after Rosalind had returned to Ibadan with nothing but a broken heart, was met with a rush of anticipation and trepidation. She feared no one would come, that all her arduous work would be in vain. But by noon, a queue snaked out the door, testament to the community's hunger for what Nourish offered: fresh, healthy, affordable food that resonated with the city's increasingly health-conscious populace. The smoothie bar in particular became an instant sensation, a vibrant oasis for busy parents, energetic workers, and seniors seeking wholesome nourishment. Success, however, was not an overnight miracle. For the first year, Rosalind barely broke even, toiling 16-hour days, juggling food prep, customer service, and bookkeeping. There were nights she collapsed into bed, too exhausted to even remove her shoes. Mornings she woke up wondering if she possessed the strength to do it all again. Through it all, Ola continued to film, capturing not just the gleaming triumphs, but the raw, unvarnished truth. Rosalind weeping over a broken blender at 3 a.m., her quiet joy at Noor Ish's FIRS 100,000 day, her slow, painstaking rediscovery of laughter and self-belief. "You should post these videos," he'd urged repeatedly. "People need to see this story." But Rosalind, still scarred, still protective, demurred. She couldn't bear the thought of Jerome, or anyone from her past, witnessing her struggles, her vulnerability. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked Ola one evening. "Then we will figure something else out," he responded simply. "But Rosalind, what if it does work? What if this is exactly what you are supposed to be doing?" By the end of Nourish's second year, his words resonated with undeniable truth. Nourish wasn't merely surviving, it was thriving, a flourishing enterprise rooted in purpose. Rosalind, too, was thriving. The broken woman who had fled Lagos was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more confident, utterly sure of her own worth. She was cautious with love, still guarding her heart, but no longer a prisoner of her past. It was then, on a golden Friday evening as they closed Nourish together, as the setting sun cast a warm glow through the windows, that Rosalind finally, unequivocally said yes to Ola. "Ola," she said as he packed away his camera, "ask me again." He looked up, understanding dawning in his eyes, a mirroring of the peace that had finally settled in her heart. "Rosalind Johnson," he said, stepping from behind the counter. "Would you like to go to dinner with me?" "Yes," she breathed, the word feeling like the first honest, unburdened utterance in years. "I would love to." Their first date, at a charming Italian bistro in the city center, felt like coming home, a comfort Jerome's opulent marriage had never offered. Ola listened intently, laughed at her jokes, and engaged her in thoughtful conversations about her dreams for Nourish. Over dessert, he confessed, "I have been in love with you for 2 years." Instead of panic, Rosalind felt a profound tranquility. "I know," she replied softly, "and I think I am ready to love you back." They moved with gentle deliberation, building a relationship on a foundation of profound friendship, mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. 6 months later, Ola proposed quietly, simply, amidst the vibrant chaos of chopping vegetables for Nourish's weekly prep. "Marry me," he asked. "Okay," she replied, just as simply. Their courthouse wedding was a modest, intimate affair, witnessed by Mama Nkechi and Ola's parents. Rosalind wore a simple white dress and carried a bouquet of sunflowers, a stark contrast to her elaborate first wedding, yet infinitely more perfect because it was real. 3 months after their wedding, two miraculous events unfolded, almost simultaneously. Ola, after persistent encouragement, convinced Rosalind to allow him to post some of the years of footage he had meticulously captured. Still protective of her rebuilt life, she trusted his judgment. The first video, a humble explanation of Nourish's philosophy, filmed without clearly showing her face, garnered 1,000 views in its first week, then 5,000, then 50,000. It exploded. Food bloggers, local news stations, national platforms, everyone clamored for her story, for her food. Orders poured in, not just from Ibadan, but from across Nigeria, hungry for Nourish's philosophy. 2 weeks after the video went viral, Rosalind, working late, felt a wave of dizziness, then nausea. 3 pregnancy tests confirmed the impossible. Positive. When she told Ola, he wept with joy, an overwhelming surge of happiness at the prospect of a family. But Rosalind, haunted by Jerome's cruel accusations, was terrified. "What if something goes wrong?" she whispered at her first doctor's appointment. "Then we will handle it together," Ola promised, squeezing her hand. "But Rosalind, what if everything goes right?" Everything went right. Better than right. At 8 weeks, the ultrasound revealed not 1 heartbeat, but 3. Triplets. 3 healthy, thriving miracles, destined to enter the world together. The irony was a sweet, potent balm. With the right partner, a man who loved and supported her unconditionally, her body, once deemed barren, had blossomed, creating 3 lives at once. "Triplets," Ola murmured, tears streaming down his face. "We are having triplets." The pregnancy, a glorious testament to true love, was nevertheless a demanding journey. Carrying 3 lives within her placed an immense strain on Rosalind's body, forcing her to temporarily step back from the demanding day-to-day operations of Nourish. She entrusted her dedicated employees to maintain the thriving business while she focused on nurturing her growing daughters. Yes, daughters. 3 perfect, healthy miracles who entered the world strong and vibrant. Holding them for the first time, gazing into their tiny faces that held Ola's thoughtful eyes and her own determined nose, Rosalind felt a profound sense of completeness she had never imagined. "Look what we made," Ola whispered from the hospital bed, each of them cradling a baby while the third slept peacefully nearby. "Look what we made," Rosalind echoed, her gaze sweeping over her precious triplets, her beloved husband, and the vibrant life they had meticulously built. For the next 2 years, their life unfolded in a quiet abundance. Nourish continued its meteoric rise, its wholesome products now stocked in grocery stores across Nigeria. They acquired a magnificent home in a tranquil Abuja suburb, complete with a sprawling backyard perfect for their daughter's boundless energy. Mama Nkechi, too, was settled in a comfortable new home, her health and happiness now paramount. Their personal lives, however, remained fiercely private. Rosalind, still wary of public scrutiny, shielded her family and her newfound peace. The business videos Ola posted never revealed their faces, never divulged intimate details, ensuring Nourish remained a brand built by a woman who cherished her privacy. Thoughts of Jerome occasionally drifted through her mind, fleeting curiosities, about his choices, his happiness. But these thoughts no longer stung. They were like distant echoes from a forgotten story. She had meticulously purged her past, changed her phone number, established new social media profiles, effectively disappearing from Jerome's world. He, as far as she knew, believed she had vanished into thin air, a fate she had consciously orchestrated. And that, she thought, was precisely how she wanted it to remain. Until that fateful Sunday, when a single phone call ripped a hole in the fabric of their carefully constructed peace. They were gathered for their weekly family dinner. Rosalind, Ola, their 2-year-old daughters, Zoe, Zara, and Zuri, a trio of fearless, chattering toddlers, and Mama and Kichi. Ola chased Zoe around the living room, filling the air with joyful laughter, while Rosalind helped Mama and Kechi set the table. Zara and Zuri, little heads bent in concentration, played with building blocks in the corner. It was a tableau of perfect, peaceful domesticity, the very life Rosalind had once only dared to dream of. Then, Mama and Kichi's phone rang. It was an unknown number, and their family policy dictated that strange calls were ignored during sacred family time. But something, an unseen force, compelled Mama and Kichi to answer. "Hello?" she said, balancing the phone between her shoulder and ear, her hands continuing to fold napkins. Rosalind watched, transfixed, as Mama's face underwent a subtle but alarming transformation. Her eyes, usually warm and serene, met Rosalind's across the room, registering a tension that sent a cold knot to her stomach. "Hold on," Mama said into the phone. Then, covering the receiver, she looked directly at Rosalind. "Rosalind, baby, you need to come here." "Who is it, Mama?" Rosalind asked, her voice tight with foreboding. Mama and Kichi's jaw tightened. "It is Jerome." The world tilted sideways. That name, unspoken in years, now reverberated in her peaceful home, a violation, a chilling intrusion. "Hang up, Mama," Rosalind said urgently. "Just hang up." But Mama and Kichi was already uncovering the phone. "I am going to hear what this fool has to say." Jerome's voice, a familiar, smooth baritone that had once stirred her heart and later churned her stomach, carried faintly through the receiver. She couldn't discern the words, but the cadence, the rhythm that had once narrated 6 agonizing years of her life, was unmistakable. Mama and Kichi's expression darkened with each passing moment. She drawled, her voice dripping with the polite yet lethal venom that only a seasoned matriarch could master. "I see. And you call in here because—" More muffled. Conversation from Jerome's end. "Well," Mama and Kechi concluded, her voice laced with incredulity, "isn't that nice for you?" Ola, sensing the sudden shift in the room's atmosphere, had quietly gathered all 3 girls, ushering them upstairs for their baths, shielding them from the encroaching storm. Rosalind was profoundly grateful for his intuitive protection. Finally, Mama and Kechi disconnected the call, her gaze fixed on Rosalind for a long, unreadable moment. "What does he want?" Rosalind asked, though a part of her dreaded the answer. Mama and Kichi delivered the news with an almost theatrical simplicity. "He is getting married, to Veronica, and he wants to invite you to the wedding." The sheer audacity of it struck Rosalind like a physical blow. He wanted to invite her to his wedding? "Oh, it gets better," Mama and Kichi added, her voice now sharp with indignation. "He specifically wanted me to tell you that you are welcome to come and celebrate with them, since you helped him get started in life, and he wanted to show his appreciation for everything you did for him." The mockery was unmistakable. This was not an invitation. It was a calculated ambush. Jerome intended to parade his triumph, his supposed happiness, before her, to rub her face in the success she had funded, the family he had created with another woman. He believed Rosalind was still the broken, discarded woman who had fled Lagos, with nothing, that she would arrive desperate, defeated, a cautionary tale to validate his new bride's perceived victory. "The audacity," Rosalind whispered, sinking into a chair, her voice trembling with disbelief. "The absolute audacity." "That man always had more nerve than sense," Mama and Kichi observed, settling into the chair opposite her daughter. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Her first instinct was to ignore it, to delete the number, to pretend the call had never happened, to guard the serene, beautiful life she had meticulously rebuilt. Why risk her peace by stepping back into Jerome's toxic orbit? But the calculated cruelty of that invitation ignited a dormant fire within her, a fierce blaze of indignation. The assumption that she remained the same broken woman he had discarded, still vulnerable to his manipulations, still small enough to be intimidated by his ostentatious success, was an affront she could not ignore. Ola descended the stairs just as Rosalind reached for her phone, his eyes immediately assessing the palpable tension in the room. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Rosalind recounted the chilling phone call, Jerome's wedding invitation, and the insidious motive behind it. Ola's face darkened as he absorbed the information, his hands clenching into fists as he grasped the profound disrespect they faced. "He thinks he is going to humiliate you," Ola stated quietly, his eyes fixed on Rosalind. "That is exactly what he thinks. And he has no idea who you are now, what you have built, what you have become." Rosalind looked at her husband, this man who had loved her back to life from her lowest ebb, who had patiently documented her journey from brokenness to brilliance, who believed in her even when she couldn't believe in herself. "No?" she said slowly, her voice gaining strength. "He has no idea." "So, what do you want to do?" Ola asked, his query a quiet affirmation of her agency. Rosalind pondered for a long moment, her mind sifting through the layers of her past. She thought of the woman who had poured everything into Jerome, receiving only ashes in return. She thought of the woman who had painstakingly rebuilt herself from scratch, transforming her pain into purpose, creating a beautiful, meaningful, and incredibly successful life. She thought of her daughters upstairs, sleeping peacefully in beds, purchased with her own hard-won earnings, in a house that embodied security, love, and everything Jerome had denied her. "I want to go," she finally declared. Ola raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise in his gaze. "You are sure about that?" "I am sure," Rosalind affirmed, her resolve firm. She would go, not to seek Jerome's validation, but to properly close that painful chapter of her life. She would face the man who had broken her, but this time, from a position of unassailable strength, a testament to her own incredible journey of self-discovery and triumph. "Okay," Ola said simply. "Then we go." "We go. You think I am letting you walk into that situation alone?" "We go, all of us." The poetic justice of bringing her 3 beautiful daughters, children Jerome had scornfully insisted she could never bear, to his wedding, as living, breathing proof of his profound error, was a powerful, irresistible allure. "Are you sure about this?" Rosalind asked Ola again, a flicker of trepidation still lingering. "This could get ugly, baby," he said, pulling her into his embrace, his voice a soothing balm. "Ugly is thinking you can invite your ex-wife to your wedding to humiliate her and getting away with it. What we are going to do is beautiful." Over the next few days, their plan unfolded with meticulous precision. Ola, leveraging his digital prowess, accessed Jerome's public social media profiles. Jerome, true to form, was an online exhibitionist, ceaselessly trumpeting his success, his lavish relationship with Veronica, and his effusive excitement for their impending nuptials. He projected an image of a man who had not merely won the lottery of life, but had orchestrated its very draw. Yet, in those perfectly curated posts, Rosalind noticed the subtle cracks in his polished facade, the smiles that never quite reached his eyes, Veronica's perpetually wary gaze, the discomfort of Fred, now 11, and their younger daughter, Kennedy, in their posed family photos. Most telling were his verbose captions about their journey to forever, where he waxed lyrical about learning what real love looked like through Veronica, implying Rosalind had been nothing more than a crude rehearsal for the main event. Ola pointed to a particular post, a photograph of their opulent wedding venue, a grand ballroom at a 5-star Abuja hotel. The caption read, "Cannot wait to celebrate with all the people that matter. New beginnings require letting go of old mistakes. Old mistakes." That was her epitaph, etched by his callous hand. Not a woman who had loved him for 6 years, not a partner who had poured her life savings into his dreams, not a soul who had endured his cruelty and still believed in his potential. Just an old mistake. "He is really going to regret this," Ola said quietly, his gaze piercing. A week before the wedding, Rosalind did something she hadn't done in years. She looked up Jerome's address. Not for contact, but to visualize the empire he had built on the foundation she had unknowingly laid. He resided in a sprawling mansion in one of Abuja's most exclusive neighborhoods, a 5-bedroom edifice with a 3-car garage and manicured gardens. Real estate portals valued it at a staggering $400,000, a testament to undeniable ill-gotten success. His dry cleaning business had expanded to 3 locations, boasting itself as Abuja's premier high-end garment service, with Jerome proudly listed as owner and CEO, his origin story conveniently omitted. Rosalind reflected on her 12,000, the seed capital for this magnificent 80F ice of DCT. He reveled in luxury, driving high-end vehicles, living a life of unbridled opulence, all funded by her sacrifice, her belief. Yet, the anger was gone, replaced by a strange sense of pride. She had in fact created success, even if she had been barred from its fruits. The money had fulfilled its purpose. It had built a better life, just not for her, not yet. The day before the wedding, they flew to Abuja, checking into a lavish suite at the Transcorp Hilton. This was not extravagance, but strategy, a deliberate projection of confidence and self-worth. The girls, wide-eyed and chattering with delight, reveled in their first airplane ride, pointing at the miniature cars below. They understood little of their destination, only that it was a grand adventure with Mama and Daddy. That night, as Rosalind tucked them into the luxurious hotel beds, Zoe, with Ola's thoughtful eyes, asked, "Mama, are we going to a party tomorrow?" "Yes, baby," Rosalind replied. "A grown-up party." "Will there be cake?" "Probably." "Good. I like cake." "If only life were that simple," Rosalind mused. "If only it were just cake and parties and being 2 years old, surrounded by unquestioning love." Sleep eluded her that night. She remembered leaving Lagos with nothing but a broken heart and a small car filled with clothes. Now she returned with a devoted husband, 3 vibrant daughters, and a multi-million naira enterprise. The transformation felt almost surreal, as if she were living a beautifully intricate dream. The day before the wedding, they flew to Abuja, checking into a lavish suite at the Transcorp Hilton. This was not extravagance, but strategy, a deliberate projection of confidence and self-worth. The girls, wide-eyed and chattering with delight, reveled in their first airplane ride, pointing at the miniature cars below. They understood little of their destination, only that it was a grand adventure with Mama and Daddy. That night, as Rosalind tucked them into the luxurious hotel beds, Zoe, with Ola's thoughtful eyes, asked, "Mama, are we going to a party tomorrow?" "Yes, baby," Rosalind replied. "A grown-up party." "Will there be cake?" "Probably." "Good. I like cake." If only life were that simple, Rosalind mused. If only it were just cake and parties and being 2 years old, surrounded by unquestioning love. Sleep eluded her that night. She remembered leaving Lagos with nothing but a broken heart and a small car filled with clothes. Now she returned with a devoted husband, 3 vibrant daughters, and a multi-millionaire enterprise. The transformation felt almost surreal, as if she were living a beautifully intricate dream. The Transcorp Hilton, a bastion of Abuja luxury, was exactly as opulent as she had anticipated. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Uniformed staff silently directed a stream of elegantly dressed guests. This was Jerome's new world. Polished, successful, wealthy. Their limousine glided to the main entrance just as a couple, in their 50s, exuding an air of old money, emerged from a sleek Mercedes. The woman's ensemble likely cost more than Rosalind's former monthly salary. These were Jerome's new peers, the kind of people who would have dismissed the old Rosalind without a second thought. But she was no longer that woman. Ola exited. First, then assisted Rosalind, his hand a steady anchor. The girls followed, their wide eyes taking in the grand hotel and the sophisticated crowd. To them, merely another exciting adventure. The doorman's eyes widened imperceptibly, not because they looked out of place, but because they looked perfectly, vibrantly, right. "Good afternoon," he greeted, holding the door with impeccable courtesy. "Thank you," Rosalind replied, her voice steady, despite the butterflies performing an elaborate dance in her stomach. Inside, elegant signage directed guests to the Morrison Williams wedding. Veronica, Rosalind noted, had kept her maiden name, or perhaps hyphenated it. A smart woman, learning from Rosalind's mistake of submerging her identity in a man's. The cocktail hour was in full swing, the ballroom alive with laughter, conversation, the gentle clink of glasses, and soft background music. It was a beautiful, lavish affair, Veronica's taste evident, Jerome's deep pockets clearly emptied. "Ready?" Ola asked, offering his arm. Rosalind took a deep breath, looked down at her daughters, who were holding hands and chattering excitedly about the pretty decorations, and nodded. "Ready." They stepped into the ballroom, and Rosalind swore the temperature dropped 10 degrees. It wasn't an immediate spectacle. Guests mingled, sipping champagne, admiring the elaborate floral arrangements. But slowly, imperceptibly, heads began to turn. People noticed the striking family that had just entered. The woman in emerald green, flanked by 3 identical, radiant little girls, and a handsome man who looked at her as if she hung the moon. Rosalind saw the exact moment Jerome spotted her. He stood near the bar, crystal glass in hand, radiating a confidence she had once found so alluring, now so repugnant. His perfectly tailored suit, expensive shoes, and bright smile were all part of the facade. Until he saw her. Then his smile froze, a grotesque mask carved onto his face. He excused himself, his eyes darting between Rosalind, Ola, and the girls, as if trying to solve an impossible riddle. "Rosalind." His voice was a mere whisper, laced with disbelief, uncertainty. "Hello, Jerome. Thank you for the invitation." He stared, trying to reconcile the elegant, formidable woman before him with the broken, discarded figure he remembered. This wasn't the narrative he had carefully constructed. "You look," he trailed off, speechless. "Different," Rosalind offered helpfully, a wry smile playing on her lips. "Yes, different." His eyes flickered to Ola, taking in the bespoke suit, the confident bearing, the protective stance. "Roberts," Ola introduced himself simply, extending a hand Jerome automatically grasped. "Rosalind's husband." "Husband," Jerome repeated, as if the word were foreign. Then his gaze dropped to the girls, who, oblivious to the adult drama, were captivated by the vibrant floral centerpieces. "And these are our daughters," Rosalind said, placing her hands on Zoe and Zara's shoulders. Zuri clung to Ola's leg, suddenly shy. "Zoe, Zara, and Zuri." "Triplets," Jerome uttered, his voice barely audible. "Yes." Rosalind watched him process the information, watched him mentally retrace time. watched him realize she had conceived and given birth to 3 healthy children within a few short years of their divorce. The very woman he had blamed for his own infertility. The same woman he had convinced himself was broken, had not only flourished but blossomed, giving life to 3 miracles. "Congratulations," he managed, the word sounding hollow. "Thank you. And congratulations to you too. Marriage is a beautiful thing, Jerome, when you find the right person." The subtle jab landed squarely. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly, but he maintained his strained smile. "Rosalind, I have to say, I'm surprised you came," he said, the calculation clear in his voice, attempting to regain control of his narrative. "Are you? I thought it would be nice to celebrate your happiness. After all, as you said, I helped you get started in life. It is wonderful to see how well you have done for yourself." Another veiled truth, another polite dig. Jerome's smile grew taut. "Yes, well, I have been very fortunate. The business has done well. Veronica and I are happy. The kids are great. Everything worked out exactly like it was supposed to." "I am so glad to hear that," Rosalind said sincerely. "It is amazing how life has a way of putting us exactly where we need to be, isn't it? I mean, if you hadn't divorced me, I never would have met Ola. I never would have started my business. I never would have had my girls. So really, I owe you a debt of gratitude." Jerome blinked slowly, visibly struggling to process her words. This was not the script he had written. She was supposed to be impressed, intimidated, diminished. Instead, she was thanking him for his betrayal. "Your business?" he finally managed. "Oh, yes. I started a company called Nourish. We focus on healthy, accessible food options. It has been quite successful, actually." "Nourish," Jerome repeated, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Wait, that is... I have seen that brand in stores." "Yes, we have expanded quite a bit over the past few years. It has been an incredible journey." Ola gently squeezed Rosalind's hand, a silent reminder of his unwavering presence. "Daddy," Zoe tugged on Ola's jacket, "I am thirsty." "Of course, sweetheart. Let us get you some juice." Jerome watched the interaction, mesmerized by the easy affection between Ola and the girls, their complete trust, his effortless response to their needs. It was everything Jerome had never been, everything he had convinced himself he didn't want to be. "Beautiful children," a voice chimed from behind them. Veronica, resplendent in her wedding dress, approached, glowing with the radiance of a woman who believed she had everything. They looked just like their mama. She was being genuinely gracious, unaware of Rosalind's identity, simply complimenting a lovely family. "Thank you," Rosalind replied warmly. "And congratulations to you, too. You look absolutely beautiful." "Thank you so much. I am Veronica, the bride." "Rosalind," she introduced herself. "And this is my husband, Ola, and our daughters." Rosalind watched Veronica's face as she spoke her name, waiting for the inevitable recognition. It took a beat, then the exact moment of realization dawned. Veronica's smile faltered, her eyes darted to Jerome, her mind visibly recalculating the entire situation. "Rosalind," she repeated slowly, "Jerome's ex-wife." "Yes. I hope you do not mind that we came. Jerome was kind enough to invite me, and I thought it would be lovely to meet you and celebrate your happiness." Veronica looked between Jerome and Rosalind as if watching a tense tennis match, struggling to understand the game. "Of course not," she finally managed, her hostess training kicking in. "Any friend of Jerome's is welcome here." "Friend?" That was a diplomatic understatement. "Veronica, darling, there you are." An older woman, clearly Veronica's mother, approached. "People are asking about the dinner seating arrangements." "Of course, Mama." Then it was Veronica's turn. Her speech began sweetly, gratitude pouring forth, but then she shifted, speaking of their journey together, of obstacles and challenges. She paused, scanning the room, and Rosalind knew, with a chilling certainty, that Veronica was looking for her. This was the moment Jerome had orchestrated. Some people might say we took the long road to get here. Jerome was married before, to someone who— Veronica paused again, choosing her words with malicious precision. To someone who just was not right for him. Rosalind's heart hammered. This was it. The public humiliation. Jerome had undoubtedly painted her as the inadequate ex-wife, and now Veronica would seal her fate. Some women, Veronica continued, her gaze finding Rosalind's, her smile taking on a sharp, predatory edge. They love with conditions. They love as long as everything is easy, as long as they are getting what they want from the relationship. But when times get tough, when life gets complicated, they check out. Ola's hand found hers under the table, his fingers intertwining in a silent pledge of solidarity. But some women, Veronica's voice rose, imbued with cruel triumph, they love without limits. They stand by their man through thick and thin. They believe in him even when he doesn't believe in himself. They sacrifice for his dreams and celebrate his successes like they are their own. She was looking directly at Rosalind now, her smile a chilling mask. Jerome's first wife, Veronica declared, her voice ringing through the silent ballroom. She was with him for 6 years, and in all that time she never gave him the one thing that really mattered. A child. 6 years, and nothing to show for it. No legacy, no future, no proof that their love could create something beautiful together. The room was utterly silent, the tension palpable, guests glancing around, sensing the unfolding drama. But me, Veronica crowed, her voice reaching a crescendo, I gave Jerome 2 beautiful children. I proved that with the right woman he could build the family he always wanted. I showed him what it meant to be truly, completely, fruitfully loved. The word fruitfully struck Rosalind like a physical slap. Veronica was publicly calling her barren, labeling her a failure, validating Jerome's false narrative. So tonight, Veronica concluded, raising her champagne glass, we celebrate not just our wedding, but our triumph over everything that tried to keep us apart. We celebrate real love, lasting love, productive love. We celebrate the fact that when you are with the right person, everything you ever dreamed of becomes possible. The applause was subdued, guests shifting uncomfortably, recognizing the thinly veiled malice beneath the celebratory words. Ola squeezed Rosalind's hand tighter. You okay? He whispered. Rosalind nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure. Jerome's planned humiliation was unfolding perfectly. But then, a profound shift occurred within her. The hurt, the embarrassment, transmuted into something else entirely. A crystalline clarity, a burning resolve. She had come to show Jerome her success, her growth. But Veronica's public attack had changed everything. They thought they knew her, thought they could dismiss her as a failure. They had no idea what Rosalind Roberts was about to teach them. The DJ announced it was time for special toasts, inviting family and friends to share a few words. Several guests stepped forward, each offering anecdotes and well wishes. Rosalind waited, her heart pounding, her mind perfectly clear. When the last planned speaker concluded, the DJ asked if anyone else wished to speak. Jerome, relaxing into his chair, probably believed the dangerous part of the evening was over, his public humiliation of his ex-wife successfully executed. That was when Rosalind stood. "Excuse me?" Her voice, clear and resonant, carried across the ballroom. "And you are?" the DJ asked politely. "Rosalind Roberts," she stated, her voice unwavering, "Jerome's ex-wife." A collective gasp rippled through the room. This was it, the confrontation everyone had implicitly sensed. Rosalind reached the microphone, taking a moment to survey the stunned faces, some curious, some uncomfortable, some undeniably thrilled to witness what was rapidly becoming the most dramatic wedding in Abuja's social history. "First," she began, her voice steady and deliberate, "I want to thank Jerome and Veronica for inviting me to share in their special day. It is not often you get to witness someone's happiness up close, and I am genuinely grateful for the opportunity." She started with grace, with generosity, ensuring no one could accuse her of pettiness. "Veronica, you look absolutely beautiful walking down that aisle. Jerome is a lucky man to have found someone who loves him so completely, so unconditionally." Veronica nodded uncertainly, unsure where this was leading. "I have been listening to the speeches tonight, hearing all these beautiful words about love and partnership and building a life together. And I have to say it has brought back a lot of memories from my own marriage to Jerome. 6 years we were together. 6 years of me believing that love meant sacrifice, that being a good wife meant giving everything you had and asking for nothing in return. 6 years of me funding Jerome's dreams with money I had saved from working double-shy FTs and skipping meals, including the 12,000 that started. The dry cleaning business that has paid for this beautiful wedding tonight." She reached into her purse, retrieving her phone, and opened the recording app. "I have something I would like to share with everyone," she announced, holding up the phone. "A recording from the night I gave Jerome everything I had, because I believed in his dreams and I wanted to help him succeed." Jerome was on his feet, his face flushed with panic. "Rosalind, don't." But she had already pressed play. Jerome's voice filled the opulent ballroom, clear and unmistakable. "I love you so much, baby. You are investing in us, in our future. I am going to make this worth it. I promise we are going to have everything we ever dreamed of." She let it play for a few more seconds, then stopped it. "Us," she repeated. "Our future. Everything we ever dreamed of. That is what he promised me the night I gave him my life savings to start his business, the business that made him wealthy enough to afford this celebration." A nervous murmur rippled through the crowd. People were beginning to understand the deeper, uglier truth. "But Veronica is right about one thing," Rosalind continued, her voice gaining strength. "I never gave Jerome a child during our 6 years of marriage. And do you know why?" She reached into her purse again, pulling out a folder brimming with medical records. "These are my medical records," she declared, holding the papers aloft. "My medical records from the fertility clinic I visited regularly during my marriage to Jerome. Records that show I am completely, perfectly, 100% fertile and healthy." Jerome shook his head frantically, trying to silence her. But Rosalind was just getting started. "Jerome refused to get tested," she explained, her voice cutting through the rising whispers. "For 6 years, he blamed me for our inability to conceive, made me believe that I was broken, that I was failing him as a wife. He said he had proof that he was fertile because he had Fred." She gestured towards the children's table, where 11-year-old Fred and a younger girl named Kennedy sat, looking bewildered. "So I did what any desperate woman would do. I secretly had Fred tested." A collective gasp echoed through the room. Jerome was now ashen-faced. Veronica looked on the verge of collapse. "DNA doesn't lie," Rosalind stated, pulling out another set of documents. "Fred is not Jerome's biological child, never was." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the click of phones as guests began to record the unfolding drama. "But that is not all," Rosalind continued, her voice gaining power with each revelation. "I also had Jerome tested. Without his knowledge, of course, but it is amazing what you can learn from a toothbrush and a few strands of hair." Jerome was backing away from his table, as if distance could somehow erase the devastating truth. "Jerome has a genetic condition that makes him completely infertile. He cannot, has never been able to, and will never be able to father children, naturally." She held up the test results, allowing everyone to see. "Which means that Kennedy, your beautiful 2-year-old daughter, is not his child either." Veronica's champagne glass slipped from her nerveless fingers, shattering on the polished floor. Her gaze, horror-stricken, confirmed that she knew. Rosalind was speaking the truth, a truth she had probably suspected for years, but in the limousine on the way back to their hotel, Ola finally spoke. "That was incredible," he said, pulling her close. "I have never been more proud to be married to you." "I can't believe I did that," Rosalind confessed, the adrenaline starting to recede, the magnitude of her actions beginning to sink in. "You told the truth. You stood up for yourself. You showed a room full of people what real strength looks like." "Mama said bad words," Zoe announced from her car seat. "What bad words, baby?" Rosalind asked, suddenly concerned. "You said Jerome was small," she said seriously. "But Jerome was big. He was taller than Daddy." Ola and Rosalind burst out laughing, the tension of the evening finally dissipating. "You are right, sweetheart," Rosalind affirmed. "Jerome was very tall, but sometimes grown-ups use the word small to mean something different than size. Like when you say I have a big heart?" Zara asked. "Exactly like that." The girls seemed satisfied and returned to playing with the limousine's fancy buttons. "Do you think I went too far?" Rosalind asked Ola quietly. "I think you went exactly as far as you needed to go. That man invited you to his wedding specifically to humiliate you, and his new wife used her speech to call you barren in front of 100 people. They declared war on you first. He was right, but a residual unease lingered." "What happens now?" Rosalind asked. "Now we go back to our beautiful life and let Jerome deal with the mess he created. You gave him the truth, Rosalind. What he does with it is his business." Back at the hotel, they ordered room service, letting the girls eat ice cream and watch cartoons. A welcome return to normalcy after such an extraordinary evening. Rosalind kept checking her phone, half expecting angry messages from Jerome, or frantic calls from wedding guests. But there was nothing but peaceful silence and the comforting presence of her family. "Mama," Zuri whispered as Rosalind tucked her into bed. "Are we going to another party tomorrow?" "No, baby. Tomorrow we are going home." "Good. I miss my room." "I miss home too," Rosalind said, kissing her forehead. She missed their house, the backyard with the swing set Ola had built, Mama and Kechi's Sunday dinners, the familiar rhythm of their life in Abuja. She missed Nourish, her employees, her customers who had become like family. She had come to Abuja, seeking closure, believing she needed to confront her past to fully embrace her future. But lying in that hotel bed, listening to her daughter's soft breaths, she realized she had moved on years ago. The broken woman Jerome had married and discarded was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more valuable. The next morning, as their plane lifted off from Abuja, Rosalind felt a profound weight lift from her shoulders. Whatever, fate awaited Jerome, and Veronica was now theirs alone. She had spoken her truth, defended her honor, and shown her daughters what it meant to stand tall against those who sought to diminish you. "Any regrets?" Ola asked as the cityscape vanished beneath the clouds. "Just one," Rosalind replied. "I should have done it years ago." He laughed, squeezing her hand. "Maybe you needed to become who you are now before you could do what you did last night." "Maybe." They flew home to Abuja, to their thriving business, their healthy family, and a future vibrant with possibility. They flew home to everything Jerome had told her she would never have, everything he had convinced her she didn't deserve, and she never looked back. The story should have ended there, with Rosalind walking away from her past into her glorious future. But Jerome wasn't quite done yet. 3 weeks after the wedding, Ola showed her an article from one of Abuja's notorious gossip blogs. Wedding. Drama. Local businessman's big day turns into Nollywood epic. Read the headline, complete with blurry cell phone photos from that night and a detailed recap of Rosalind's dramatic revelations. The article was brutal, dissecting Jerome's infertility, the questions surrounding his children's paternity, and the business built on his ex-wife's money. Someone had even posted audio from her speech, which had garnered thousands of views. But the most interesting revelations were buried in the comments section, where several people claiming to know Jerome and Veronica personally shared additional details. Apparently, Veronica had suspected for years that Kennedy wasn't Jerome's child. There had been a brief separation around Kennedy's conception, during which Veronica had been seeing someone else. She had convinced herself the timing worked out, but deep down, the doubt had festered. Jerome, meanwhile, was struggling financially, living far beyond his means, desperately clinging to a facade of success. The lavish wedding, the luxury cars, the designer clothes, all financed by credit and loans he was now struggling to repay. Within a month of the wedding, Veronica filed for divorce, taking Kennedy and moving back in with her parents, leaving Jerome alone in a heavily mortgaged mansion. The scandal had decimated his business reputation, prompting high-profile clients to flee. But here was the twist that truly resonated with Rosalind. Veronica's attorney was now pursuing the business assets in the divorce. She argued that, as his wife, she was entitled to half of everything he had built during their marriage. Jerome countered that the business predated their union, thus wasn't community property. That's when Veronica's attorney presented a compelling argument. If Jerome had used his ex-wife's money to start the business, and if that ex-wife had never been properly compensated for her investment, then technically the business assets could still be considered marital property from his first marriage. It was a legal long shot, but enough to freeze Jerome's assets in court for months. Rosalind learned all this when Veronica's lawyer, Jennifer Martinez, called her at Nourish one Tuesday morning. "Mrs. Roberts," Jennifer began, "I represent Veronica Morrison in her divorce proceedings against Jerome Morrison. I was wondering if you might be willing to discuss the investment you made in your ex-husband's business." Rosalind, stirring a pot of soup, had to sit down. "What kind of discussion?" she asked carefully. "Well, based on what happened at the wedding and the information that is now public, it appears you may have a legitimate claim to a portion of the business assets if you were never properly compensated for your initial investment. If there was no formal agreement, then legally speaking, you might still have a financial interest in the company." It had never occurred to Rosalind to pursue Jerome's money. She had her own thriving business, her own financial security. She didn't need anything from him. But as Jennifer explained the legal principles, Rosalind understood this wasn't about money. It was about justice. It was about holding Jerome accountable for what he had taken. "How much are we talking?" "About?" she asked. "Well, that depends on several factors. Your initial investment, the business's worth at your divorce, its current value. But conservatively, we are probably talking about several hundred million naira, possibly more." Several hundred million naira, enough to expand Nourish into new markets, establish college funds for her daughters, and ensure Mama Nkechi never worried about medical bills again. "I need to think about this," she told Jennifer. "Of course, but Mrs. Roberts, you should know that the statute of limitations on this kind of claim is running out. If you are going to pursue this legally, you need to act soon." Rosalind discussed it with Ola that night. "What do you think?" she asked him. "I think Jerome owes you a lot more than money. But if the law says you are entitled to compensation for what you invested, then maybe you should take it." "It feels like kicking someone when they are already down," Rosalind mused, still conflicted. "Rosalind," Ola countered, his voice firm. "This man invited you to his wedding specifically to humiliate you. He allowed his new wife to call you barren in front of 100 people. He took your money, your loyalty, your love, and threw them back in your face. He is not down because of bad luck or circumstances beyond his control. He is down because his lies finally caught up with him." Ola was right, but Rosalind still wrestled with the decision. She had worked so hard to move beyond revenge, to find peace. Going after Jerome's money felt like a step backward. But then she thought of all the other women. Women who had given everything, been discarded, blamed, and left feeling like failures. Women who lacked the resources or support system to rebuild their lives. What if this wasn't about revenge, but setting a precedent? What if this was about showing other women they didn't have to accept being treated as disposable? She called Jennifer the next morning. "I want to pursue the claim," Rosalind said. "Not for revenge, but for justice. And I want to donate whatever we recover to organizations that help women rebuild their lives after divorce." "That is very generous of you, Mrs. Roberts," Jennifer replied. "And it will probably help with the optics of the case if the judge sees that you are not just trying to get rich off your ex-husband's misfortunes." The legal process spanned 8 months. Depositions, document reviews, court hearings Rosalind mostly didn't attend. 8 months of Jerome's lawyers arguing the money was a gift, not an investment. But Rosalind had her recording. The recording, where Jerome clearly stated it was an investment in us, in our future, promising everything we ever dreamed of. The recording proved the money came with expectations and promises never fulfilled. In the end, the judge ruled in Rosalind's favor, entitling her to compensation equal to her original investment plus interest and a portion of the business growth adder I buted to that initial funding. The total came to just over $400,000. Jerome had to sell one of his 3 dry cleaning locations to pay the judgment. Yet, the most surprising part was that Rosalind felt no vindication, no triumph, just a profound sense of closure. Done with Jerome, done with that chapter, done with the anger. The money wasn't victory. It was simply the period at the end of a very long sentence. She honored her promise, donating the money to 3 Chicago-based organizations that supported women transitioning out of abusive or unhappy marriages, providing job training, childcare, legal assistance, and emotional support. 400,000. SPLIT 3 ways would help count less women. The Donut Ion made local news, leading to a feature story about Nourish and Rosalind's journey. That story led to speaking engagements, a book deal, and a new chapter as an empowerment speaker, helping women find strength after life's knocks. 5 years after Jerome's wedding invitation, Rosalind stood on a stage at a women's empowerment conference in Denver, addressing 500 women. "The man who broke me," she told them, thought he was inviting a victim to his wedding. Instead, he invited the woman who would expose his lies, reclaim her power, and use her experience to help hundreds of other women do the same. The applause was thunderous. But what truly mattered were the women who approached her afterwards, tears in their eyes, emotional support. 400,000 SPLIT 3 ways would help count less women. The Donut Ion made local news, leading to a feature story about Nourish and Rosalind's journey. That story led to speaking engagements, a book deal, and a new chapter as an empowerment speaker, helping women find strength after life's knocks. 5 years after Jerome's wedding invitation, Rosalind stood on a stage at a women's empowerment conference in Denver, addressing 500 women. "The man who broke me," she told them, thought he was inviting a victim to his wedding. Instead, he invited the woman who would expose his lies, reclaim her power, and use her experience to help hundreds of other women do the same. The applause was thunderous. But what truly mattered were the women who approached her afterwards, tears in their eyes. If you enjoyed the story, then like, subscribe, and share this story with your loved ones. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from.